Hey everyone. So Phil and I thought we would do a video because we've had a Q&A question recently from somebody who's coming into the appropriate natural human diet from the position of having been an ethical vegan for many years. And we discussed it briefly on our last Q&A, which you can still get under August, so mid-August 23. But we thought we'd do a standalone discussion on this for anybody who is coming from that particular point, because we completely understand you may simply have a visceral physiological kind of gag reflex to the idea of putting meat in your mouth and being able to swallow it and stuff like that, and we appreciate that you can't just immediately think your way out of those kinds of beliefs. So where do we start? I mean, I guess the first thing is to appreciate that it's a process and it's for you, and just to be kind on yourself, really, and don't put massive expectations on yourself that you ought to be able to go out and order a whole leg of beef and tuck into it with a sharp knife.
Well, some people can, but some people can't. I suppose it depends on how many levels of the deception you've been caught up in, really, I suppose. You know, for me, it was, I could have done it straight away. I mean, when I decided to go keto, I did it straight away, but I hadn't figured out that I didn't need the plants yet. But we're not saying that everybody needs to go that far. It depends on a lot of things. Depends on your health condition. If you're just a bit depleted from veganism, then you know, you can take it a bit slower. Maybe if you've got a serious condition that needs addressing, maybe you have to rip that band-aid off in one and go cold turkey. But yeah, there are many levels to it, aren't there? There's the health aspect, the body readjusting to its new well, it's traditional human diet, and there's a moral, the ethical, the spiritual, the disgust at putting a rotting corpse into your mouth. All these levels. See what we can do.
I mean, you never identified as an ethical vegetarian or vegan, did you? Even in those times, that you were doing it more for the spiritual enlightenment aspect, which I guess is, I would imagine, doesn't run quite as deep as this is just plain wrong.
No, I used to eat a vegan diet and then spend most of my day running around killing animals. No, I didn't. I'm messing.
Did you always fish though? Did you always fish? But I guess you don't kill fish when
I never liked fish. I used to go fishing, but I never liked fish. So, you know, even putting a hook in fish and then releasing them unharmed, I suppose, is not a very vegan pursuit. But I didn't have that manic sort of a militant vegan thing. I don't think there was that much of it around in those days. It was just like, oh, you eat meat? Oh, that's rather disgusting. You know, it wasn't you murderer, you animal rapist and whatever like we get these days. And, you know, because there hadn't been all the propaganda films playing on people's emotions.
So, well, it wasn't really a cult at that point, was it?
No.
It was a lifestyle choice. I mean, I think the term vegan has been around since the 1940s, when somebody split off from the British Vegetarian Society, saying they weren't vegetarian enough and wanted to do something new. So that's when they actually came up first with the term vegan.
Yeah, most of the time I was sort of lacto-ovo vegetarian, like the sort of yogi types. The veganism thing came in desperation when I'd already got very sick. When you think you have to go even more vegetarian, you know, and eat all this pure food. And yes, so it went through raw veganism, fruitarianism and everything, and absolutely destroyed me. Considering it destroyed me quite quickly, considering how ill I was when I went into it. And so it was quite a test to compare that with a good meat-based keto diet, which was when I started to recover.
Yeah. So we've got these three main legs that we talk about a lot. We talk about them in our presentations. You've got the health side of things, and to me, I would guess that the health considerations are probably the easiest to see coming and to wrap your head around, because I mean, how many stories are there of people who've just been reduced to gibbering zombies by malnutrition and then eat a piece of salmon, and it feels like your brain's just going, a little sound goes and your brain boots up again, and then you put more meat in, you put eggs in, you put whatever in, and suddenly it feels like, zing, I'm coming back to life and glowing. So that's quite straightforward. And obviously we've got the red pill food revolution, which those first few chapters of that, like Fat for Life, should on a cognitive level pretty much put any of those considerations to bed. Then we've got the ecological side of things, which is important, but again, completely mythical. The idea that, I mean, we can work through all of that, but I don't think this is really the time and the place to do it. I think we should focus more on the third leg, which is the ethics. But the idea, I mean, just to, I think our first big headshot on this is that the idea that animals can destroy nature just falls at the first hurdle, because they are bloody nature, right? We've supposedly had dinosaurs the size of 5 double-decker buses. We've had as many bison and ruminants and mammoth and aurochs and woolly everythings that you could think of roaming the earth, and they've never managed to choke it to death with farts before. So how the hell is it supposed to be happening now? I mean, the arguments go on and on and on about how, yes, there is a correlation between CO2 and temperature, but it's actually CO2 that lags behind the temperature by several hundred years. And you look at the very long-term charts, and you can see that there's actually temperature peaks and troughs over a very long period, which must be to do with our proximity to the sun. And then you've got the Milankovitch cycles in the medium term that we can really do nothing about, which is again due to the wibbly wobbly nature of orbit or whatever it is. Give over. And but then the other thing is in the short term as well, that it's the most accurate predictor of temperature changes on Earth is to do with solar activity. The more solar flares there are, the more solar activity. It throws these particles out into space that then interrupt the cosmic rays that would normally come and interact with water vapor and make clouds and cool the place down. So the more solar activity there is, actually, give over, you two, the warmer it is. And Piers Corbyn has shown that is pretty much a fact. Another thing that you can look at is the fact that while we are getting a bit warmer right now in most places, that the CO2 since the Industrial Revolution, the last 200 years, the atmospheric CO2 concentration has really shot up, but temperature hasn't. In fact, it kind of got cooler over the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and people, the headlines then were starting to worry about, is there an impending ice age? Which, according to the Milankovitch cycles, we are probably due ice age very soon.
Also, having been at a party last summer at Darren Nesbitt's place with Piers Corbyn, fire breathing with petrol, setting fire to it, I think he's more likely to be contributing to global warming than the farting cows. But I think you make a very good point that nature has never destroyed itself, and animals have never destroyed nature and whatever. I think what the vegans fail to grasp, the ones who attack me on my YouTube channel and whatever, the thing they fail to grasp is that I think carnivores are probably more against horrific factory farming than anybody else, except that we do something about it and vote with our wallets and go and buy good meat and grass-fed meat from local farmers and whatever, and make sure that that we're not financing the horrible factory farming, particularly with pigs and chickens. But we'll eat the proper meat. Whereas vegans, they will pretty much condone that by still eating the stuff that they claim is grown for the animals in the factory farming conditions, which wouldn't be grown for them if humans didn't eat those plants. So, and then, as in a futile effort to protest against factory farming, they go and poison themselves with a load of grains and pulses and toxic vegetables. So I think that's not a very good protest. You know, I've seen better ones with at least more entertaining ones where, you know, vegans go into shops and give frozen chickens funerals and stuff like that. It gets very bizarre in the end. And if they only realized that what they were doing really wasn't saving the planet, it wasn't saving them, and it wasn't saving animals, it'd be a very big step. It's very interesting when you argue with them, the cognitive dissonance of that. You know, oh, well, but the killing of animals is accidental, you know, in crop farming. Well, what don't they understand about the word pesticide? And so if you look into that and realize, I mean, I've seen vegans get really quite emotional when they come out of this and then realize that what they were doing was not helping the planet at all. And we've got to eat something. I'm sorry to people who think they can get to be a breatharian via fruitarianism, but it isn't really happening. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get to eat nothing, so you got to eat something. So you might as well eat the most vegan thing on the menu, which we often call grass-fed beef and lamb.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think the environmental side of it is pretty easy to get under control as well. And then, you know, you're left with the disgust and the spiritual side, really.
Let's also touch on the whole concept of death. You know, I'm a vegan because I choose to avoid causing the death of animals. I don't want to kill animals. So yes, there's this very good argument that you're killing countless more animals. I mean, that in the process of preparing agricultural land to grow a monocrop, which is completely unnatural as well, by the way. This is not in accordance with nature whatsoever. Unless you are pretty much growing all of the food that you eat through permaculture methods, which are extremely rare, really, then but here's the point. It's not just a head count. It's not just a kill stat on how many animals are killed, and how do you score between spiders and snails and worms and small rodents or big rodents and snakes and lizards and deer and all of these things, and rabbits. I mean, how many rabbits are shot or poisoned to protect crops? Rats, mice, all of this stuff. But that's not really the point. The thing that really gets me about modern agriculture and the way that row crops are grown is that it involves ecocide. Modern industrialized agriculture is ecocide. You have to destroy ecosystems because you cannot afford to allow nature to carry on in that area. So you might have a field that's 1,000 acres, and you have to destroy every single member of every single species that is unwelcome if you want to grow, say, rapeseed or soy or corn or wheat or whatever it may be. You destroy every other thing because you don't want other plants turning up in your combine harvesters. You don't want rodents coming and helping themselves. And the other problem is that because you want to plant a single species for 1,000 acres all around, because it's so unnatural, then it's like completely destroying a human's gut biome with an enormous epic dose of internal oral antibiotics, right? You lose all your resilience to anything, which is why the farmers then have to go along with pesticides, because you get, you know, pill beetles that come and destroy this crop. And there's always a particular class of insect or invertebrate that goes, fantastic, there's this one crop that I eat as far as the eye can see, and they multiply like crazy and go and try and destroy the crop in some plague. But it's all because humans have taken it upon themselves to think that we can do a better job than nature can of producing food. And also, while we're at it, this whole conceit that this is the most efficient way to grow food, and the only way we could feed the world is with these giant robot-controlled, satellite-guided combines and machines and crop sprayers and seeders and everything like that. Absolute nonsense. Because you've got a patch of land, you'll get one, maybe two crops off that patch of land in a year. But in nature, you'll have 100 different species growing all at different times throughout the year. Some grow, they come down, they're all sucking in carbon, they're all drawing up nutrients out of the ground, they're dropping their seeds, they're coming back next year. They are cycling the life over and over and over again, which is the complete opposite of what we're doing. We eradicate all the life, ecocide. You literally destroy, annihilate a whole ecosystem in order to plant your corn or your soy or whatever it may be. You plant your one thing, then you have to destroy anything that wants to come along and have a share of it. And then you harvest it. And by the way, then the soil becomes completely depleted of minerals because it's just having annual crops with tiny little roots planted in it over and over and over again. So the organic matter, and then it gets ploughed, of course, and tilled, yeah, once or more per year, which then is going to eliminate whatever organic matter there may remain within the soil. So you're just going to end up with completely inert, dead dirt before you know it. That, yes, you can grow crops in, but what you can't see when you walk down the grocery aisle in the supermarket is that these green, identical looking leeks and lettuces are almost completely mineral depleted. The only thing that's left in them is the polyphenols that the plant has developed millions of years ago to prevent animals from eating it, that you're going to be putting in your body. But even since the 50s, the mineral and nutrient level in agriculturally grown fruits and vegetables is plummeted by like half. So it's absolutely crazy. But this idea that my diet causes less death than your diet, we can just push that all aside, because it's not about death. Because for every life, there has to be one death. This is how life works. Right? What we want, the ideal, is to work in accordance with natural law. And in accordance with natural law, we have a place, and that place is to be predators. We know that if you have herbivores without predation, that they will destroy their own environment. We saw this in Oostvaardersplassen that we talked about. We talk about it in the book. We talk about it in some of our presentations. You put herbivores out into this idyllic thing, they will just breed as quickly as they can, depending on the amount of food there, and then they'll eat all the food, and then half of them will die off of starvation and rot and cause a stink, right? Nature creates plants in abundance. It then creates plant-eating animals in as much abundance as the plants will support, but then also creates predatory carnivorous animals that control the numbers of the herbivores so that they don't destroy themselves. It works absolutely beautifully. And that is our role. That is our, so depending on what your view of metaphysics, or whether created by God or Mother Nature, or whatever, however you want it, that is our design. That is the way that we have been made. We are supposed to eat plant-eating animals. That's what we've done for as long as we can tell, until just recently, the last 10,000 years, when we started to farm, and we simply didn't figure out until very recently, because we've only been doing it 10,000 years, that's not very long. And the human species has supposedly been around 200, maybe a bit more, 1,000 years, but the genus Homo has been around for millions. So we've been around for a long time. We've only been farming for 10,000. And it isn't until very recently that we figured out that we're completely screwing everything up, not just our health, but also killing the soil as well. So it's not about minimizing death. It's about maximizing life. If you want to minimize death, the best way to do it is modern industrial agriculture, right? You're absolutely right. The vegans are absolutely right in that aspect, because what you're doing is you're minimizing life. You are destroying whole ecosystems. Every single layer of those ecosystems you're annihilating. And that is a pretty good way of minimizing the amount of death that is caused. There are more things living and dying in permanent pasture than there are on those fields, because there's nothing left to kill in those fields. That's the thing. So
Well, I'd say, the death thing, when you get over the fear of death, and I think that if you actually look at it, the root of the worry about death is a fear of death for themselves that's projected onto animals. As you say, death is part of the natural cycle. Death is not actually that pleasant in nature usually. It's, you get ripped to bits and eaten half alive by something. And a bolt gun to the head for a cow or a sheep is probably about the best death you could have. And they have a very easy life on pasture, and they chill out, and, they're happy. Whereas with crop production that vegans eat, it's not about the deaths, as you say, but it's about the suffering as well. Because what kind of a death do the animals get that are killed for crop production? I mean, to be killed by pesticides, first of all, you're driven out of your home if you do survive, all the tilling of the land, and you don't just get left there with a back leg cut off and bleeding to death or whatever. You get your home destroyed, so you have to go running away and find another one. That's not very nice. I mean, if you plowed a vegan's house to the ground, they would probably be very upset about that. And so they might know how the animals feel that are displaced, that even survive. But then when they're killed with pesticides...
And of course, you've had to remove all the trees, all the hedgerows and everything else to make room for your giant machines that just want to come and bulldoze over everything. So
yeah, exactly. The death that you get from pesticides is horrific. And then you think, well, okay, that's just small animals, some of them think. But then I've, a few times I've sent them pictures. If you Google, deer caught in combine header, and you see these deer sort of sucked back end first into a combine harvester, and that's going to be a horrific death. And these animals are also not used properly. I mean, they're just left to die. There's these rodents and whatever that are poisoned and run around in agony probably for a half a day or a couple of days or whatever before they die. Then they're not even used. They just get left to rot. At least we have the respect of eating those animals. So you kill a cow or whatever. Now we have refrigeration. That would feed a person for a year. It would feed a whole tribe when they got a big kill. And they didn't do anything else. They didn't stay around there and then go kill a load of other animals and cut their legs off. It was perfect balance with nature. So one life would go to feed all the tribe, whereas a vegan diet causes tremendous devastation, horrific animal suffering, whether they survive or they don't. They get a long, protracted death. And there's not even the respect to eat them after that. So I would say that is probably the moral side of it pretty much covered, eh?
Yeah, but because to eat other living things, which is what we all have to do, by the way. There's none of this stuff is inorganic. It all comes from living things, whether plants or animals. And we're not going to get into the plants have feelings too. They scream when they're hot, whatever. And it's completely irrelevant. The point is, there's nothing wrong at all with eating animals. If the nature, if you believe that nature is good, when you look around and see the multi-layered perfection and beauty, this balanced system that wherever you go on Earth, where there is soil, you get plants, and where you get plants, you get plant-eating animals, and when you get plant-eating animals, you get animal-eating animals. And what it is this amazing cycle where everything is just striving to get enough energy and enough nutrients into it so that it can carry on and procreate, right? That's what plants do, all plants, what all fungi do, what all invertebrates do, what all large animals do as well, on the land and in the sea. That's literally how life works. The imperative of life, the drive of life, is to survive long enough to procreate. And in order to do that, you have to eat. So plants get their energy from the sun, the water from the soil, the CO2 from the air. They do what they do. Herbivores get everything they need from the plants, and carnivores, and we've gone over this many times, but the plant-eating animals co-evolve with the particular species that they eat. There's no animal out there that can eat all the plants at all, right? They're all very selective because they've co-evolved to be able to deal with the plant's chemical defenses, which they then strip out. Now, carnivores don't have the ability to deal with the plant's chemical defenses, because why? Why would they need to? Why would they need those genes, to develop those genes and keep those genes switched on to create the different proteins that they might need to deal with the toxins in eucalyptus leaves, like a koala can? Right? We don't need that ability. We don't have that ability. We've probably never had that ability. Humans have never eaten leaves and stalks and stems. We just didn't need to. So we cannot process out the anti-nutrients in the plants. But again, we're getting back into the health side of things. But the point of this is that is just one more piece of evidence that shows that we are ordained to eat animals, because we don't have the ability. It makes us sick if we don't. You can identify as a herbivore if you want. It doesn't make you a herbivore any more than me cutting off my junk and putting on a dress makes me a woman. It doesn't. Right?
Putting it that way is brilliant. And I think that, just to mention that at the moment, because you mentioned the plant toxins, is it not logical that the ideal diet for any species would be the diet that gives them everything that they need and nothing that is toxic to them? And I think that's what makes it really clear for me that, there is nothing whatsoever that you can't get from meat. And you don't need any plants, although some of them harm you less than others. And that core knowledge is really what gives us a clue as to what is our ancestral diet. Now, some people say there's some hormetic effect and a little bit of poison is good for this and that, but I mean, how much? I'd just rather have none of them. But if people want to eat seasonal fruit and whatever, that's fine. Eat like our ancestors, that's great. But we don't need any plants. If you look at it that way, we don't need any plants. The argument for veganism is dead. It's not healthy. It's full of toxins. It ruins the ecosystem. The next question that they always say, once you get to that point, well, of course, there isn't enough land. We couldn't possibly feed everybody on meat. Now, these extremes, this reductionism that everybody has to eat exactly the same, is never going to happen. But let's just take a world
that's a logical paradox, by the way. It's a logical fallacy. It's called reductio ad absurdum. To say you take it to the extreme, to say, well, at the extreme it doesn't work. But even then, who says it doesn't work? I mean, our conclusion in the Red Pill Food Revolution was feeding the choice of whether we can feed 10 billion or 12 billion or 20 billion people. That isn't ours to make. We already have natural laws in place that govern all of that. Let's feed ourselves in a sustainable and healthy manner and let nature govern the population number problem. It's tough, but that's the way it has to be.
If you do actually look at it, what is it? Something like 2.5 or 3% of whatever the world's land is suitable for arable crops. And we're destroying the soil anyway, so we're getting in trouble there. Whereas it's something like 25% or something like that. Anyway, a much bigger number of land that is suitable for grazing animals.
Marginal land, so it's too steep, it's too rocky,
it's too steep,
whatever. Yeah, you can grow sheep on wetlands. You can't grow crops on.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you did go to completely good grass-fed animal agriculture and whatever, you probably could feed the whole planet and get more nutrition than you would do out of the 2.5% that you're growing these nutrient-free and toxin-rich crops. So yes, it would be possible. And not only that, it would maintain the ecosystems. So yeah, we're never going to get there. We're never going to be 100% carnivorous society, not anymore. There are some left and they're incredibly healthy. But I don't think in the Western world in our lifetime, we're going to see everybody eating grass-fed meat and nothing else. But theoretically, it would be possible, yes. So that is an argument that really doesn't stand up. How are we going to feed all these people? Eat what you want, just be educated, you know. But anyway, you know, you're at the point now, I guess, where you're transitioning out of veganism. So you're listening to us, trying to find all these points. Where would we go next? The health side of it, I guess we've kind of covered, haven't we?
We've covered. I mean, the big thing is this idea that death is wrong and killing is wrong. I mean, the thought experiment that we use that we've used in talks and stuff like that before is to like show a picture of a golden eagle eating a rabbit, right? The eagle eats the rabbit. Is it, and try and break it down. Where exactly is the wrong that occurred? Is it wrong that the rabbit died? Well, that can't be true because every rabbit dies. So if you're going to say that rabbits dying is wrong, then rabbits being born is wrong, and that makes nature wrong, makes life wrong, right? So you can't do that. Is it wrong that the eagle killed the rabbit? Well, again, you're making nature wrong. Is it wrong that the eagle killed the rabbit because it's an obligate carnivore? That you can't just put, where is the point of wrongness in all of that? And vegans will say, well, we have other options. We can eat soy and tofu and mung beans and stuff like that. Yeah, we can eat them. It's not, doesn't give us everything our bodies need, and isn't really good for the environment. We can eat them, and it doesn't involve killing a cow. But what's the difference? You know, if the cow would never have a life if we didn't eat it, right? So the beef animal. So this is the thing. Life and death they're not opposites of each other. They are a package. They come together. So what we want is an abundant earth that is teeming with life, where animals get to live. And by the way, they do get looked after. You know, they get protected. They get medical care when needed. They make sure they've got enough food. They stop them from freezing to death in the winter, you know, until their one bad day that they have at the end. And it ain't even all that bad compared to what their ancestors would have experienced at the pack of the hands of a pack of wolves after a long chase, you know. Death is not wrong. You can't make death wrong. If you make death wrong, you have to make life wrong. And that's really profound. But I think once you get your head around that, then you can start then to look at this meat and to say, rather than being revolted by this meat, that I'm going to see that I'm going to give thanks for this, and I'm going to perceive it as my medicine that I am divinely ordained to receive and to give thanks for it, and to consume it with joy and gratitude.
Yes, but you see, the thing is that this would be the next argument that would come up, because I've been through it a million times with vegans. The next argument that comes up is that we have the discernment, and we have, you know, we have
moral agency.
Yes, we have a spiritual side now, and when we eat animals, we take on their fear, we take on the fear in the meat. We cannot ascend. It doesn't feed the higher chakras. We will never become enlightened. We need to do that. Now, this, as we've also spoken about many times, and I have on my YouTube channel, it comes from religion. You know, it comes from religion and spirituality, and I think although some people who perpetuate this myth are not bad, they're not trying to control everybody, but they've got this idea from people that originally wanted to try and control people. Because all through history, as we've said in the Red Pill Food Revolution book, you know, we have been made weak and suggestible with these plant-based diets. The brains shrink, the logic goes, and you become quite easy to control compared to somebody who has their brain fueled with proper animal fats and all the nutrients that they need. So when there's this business of enlightenment, as you said often, Ben, I mean, it's an insult to our ancestors. They're in every tribe, in every time, in every latitude, every country. There have been enlightened masters. There's always been a wise person in the tribe, and all of them were probably in a better state of consciousness than we are in the West today, with all the toxins that they throw at us, and all the myths that they give us, all the lies about who we are and what we are actually able to do, and what our consciousness can expand towards. And all these people ate meat. They could not possibly have survived without meat. So then we come into religion, comes in, and it starts to say, oh, you know, you can't do this, you can't do that. You've got this Seventh-day Adventist thing. Now go to our, you know, why veganism is wrong. Now it's probably the food conspiracy one. It's a food conspiracy video on my YouTube channel that Ben and I did. And we go into the whole business of the Seventh-day Adventists and how how these myths about diet and how you got to eat this Garden of Eden diet to quell sexual desire, and Harvey Kellogg's anti-masturbation cornflakes. Won't go through all of that here, but if you go and see how
they were right.
Yeah,
because it
ruins your hormones. Yeah, so absolutely.
But again, the problem is that they had a problem with life. They actually had a problem with their divinely ordained place in the web of life. And sex is a part of that, and then that's what was driving it all. But they just don't appreciate the cycle of how everything actually works, and wanted to impose a fix on it.
As a friend told me today, she wasn't aware of the whole diet side of the Seventh-day Adventists, but their whole drive was to sort of demean the sex act and make it make it nasty and a dirty thing to do and something to be avoided. And so these are these are the sources of this crazy information. And over in the East, India used to be they used to eat a load of beef. They used to win wars and stuff. And then they started going vegetarian and got conquered. And, you know, you look into the old texts of Ayurveda, where the real genius of sort of medicine comes from, the science of Ayurveda, the whole of the Vedas. And they say that meat is the most nutritious food for the body. It's like Amrit, like nectar. Nothing nourishes the body so well. And people have forgotten all about this once the religion came in and started messing about with our natural human diet, to our very great cost. And now people say, "Oh, look at India! Aren't they all so healthy? They survive beautifully on a vegetarian diet." And no. It's the diabetes, heart disease, and autoimmunity capital of the world. They go, "Oh, well, that's only since McDonald's and sweets and things like that came in." But no, it's been like that for a long time. Even people who eat well. I've kind of grown up these past 30 odd years in this town among people who've eaten a Southern Indian diet in a Northern English town, and it's wreaked havoc on their health, wreaked havoc on my health. And that's even when they're including some dairy and some eggs and whatever. So, when you get into the whole veganism side of things, there's never been a multi-generational culture that has been vegan. It messes about with your fertility, which is another thing that they enjoy, because nice for a bit of depopulation as well, because the elites have grabbed onto it now. And I think an important point here as well is that what are the elites pushing for? A load of people have woken up, and that's Ben and my sort of main drive at the moment, to try and wake people up, woken up about all the other controls of the elites and all these sort of evil controllers that we have now. And yet they haven't woken up to the fact that they're pushing plant-based diets, and they want us to eat all these processed Beyond burgers and whatever. And that should be enough, really, to make people stop and think, hold on a minute. But it takes a while for the vegan brain to come back online. It takes a lot of coaxing. It usually takes a catastrophic health collapse, which is a shame, for them to come back online and understand all of this. But this business of enlightenment, I've got a few videos on my YouTube channel about this, because I came from that sort of yogi background and used to believe that. But believe me, there is nothing like a raging autoimmune condition for preventing you from expanding your consciousness. I mean, in an indirect way, it can expand your consciousness, because it's a huge learning experience, and it did for me. But at the time, I think I'd probably, have been a lot better off without it. And maybe I had to go through it to be able to talk about stuff like this. But I'd rather other people didn't have to, if they just wanted to get about their lives and be as healthy as they wanted to do, and not waffle like Ben and I do about all this stuff and try and try and help people out of it. So, the spiritual side, honestly, it's nonsense. I have a podcast series called Carnivore and Beyond, and my Red Pill Buddha's one as well, but particularly Carnivore and Beyond. I only did 10 episodes, but it's still out there on podcast platforms. It's on my YouTube channel. You can listen to people who are very spiritual people, and they're talking about how they had health issues, mental health issues, physical health issues, and some I've even consulted after I did a Buddha at the gas pump interview that got taken down, but in 2015. I got to consult with a lot of people who were even a few spiritual teachers. A couple of them reckoned they'd lost their awakenings because of the ill health that brought about by a plant-based diet, and how they'd regain their health once they went back onto meat, or preferably as few plants as possible to allow those toxins to dissipate and to nourish themselves properly. And one last point on this, we are told that meat fuels the lower chakras, the base desires and whatever. But we have chakras. I mean, are our arms better than our legs? Which ones do you want to cut off? It's same with the chakra system, if it exists in that way, as we're led to believe. Oh, I'm in the higher chakras, I'm all spaced out. So vegans and vegetarians, they can get up into those chakras with their spiritual practice. I don't believe with their diet. And then they come to associate one with the other. Oh, I feel so gross on meat. No, you don't. You went veggie, you learned a few spiritual practices, you opened your consciousness a bit, and then you got sick. There's no reason why you can't open all those chakras at once. Why are the higher chakras more important than the lower ones? You need all of them. A building's not going to work without decent foundations. You might have the most beautiful upstairs windows, but they're going to be bugger all use if you haven't got any foundations on the house, because the whole damn thing's going to collapse. So that whole sort of chakra system and whatever really isn't, if you're stuck in that, please look deeper. The old texts of Ayurveda that those old rishis actually cognized do not go along with that. It's been perverted by preposterous religious dogma.
Well, this then raises another common objection that the people say, where they say, well, yes, but we're evolving. We're evolving beyond the need to kill animals for our food. We're evolving so that we can survive just on mangoes and whatever they are, jackfruit.
Yeah, because you'll be too sick. You'll be too sick to go out and kill the animals, and then you'll die anyway. So you will move on.
Yeah, yeah. But I love this. It came up this word enlightenment today, about people who think that all these 10 million mainly brown faces in my past that I could stand in front of and say, yes, but now I'm a vegan. I've ascended beyond you and or your shamanic, the savage practices and your pagan beliefs, and you're following the sun and the moon and all that kind of stuff. Enlightenment, I'm elevated now above all of that stuff. It's ridiculous, this idea that nature has been waiting for nice white middle class vegans with rings through their noses to come along and fix the obvious flaws in her model that only managed to work for 100, 200 million years before we came along to go, what we need is plant-based cafes, and then that'll put everything right.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you're stuck in that whole thing of being a sort of meditating vegetarian type, let me tell you that, I've been meditating since probably 1980, 1981, and I have had some wonderful experiences. Eating more meat and now eating exclusively meat has not dampened down those experiences. I don't feel I need to meditate every day, because I used to feel I have to do it twice a day. It was almost to like balance my crazy emotions. It was like things would happen, I really need to meditate morning and evening. I have to do my whole transcendental meditation program and the cities and the flying and all of that. I have to do it. And you see other people having to do that because they just can't kind of live without it. And now it doesn't matter. It's like eating. It's like you don't need to eat so often. You don't need to meditate so often, because all of life becomes that miracle. Once you understand about nature, all of life is that miracle. And you don't need to sort of say, oh, I'm chasing a carrot. I'm chasing something better than I have now. Be absolutely delighted with what goes on now. Enjoy the miracle of just living, and the privilege of being able to have an animal to eat, and have the gratitude and the respect for that animal. You know, that you just don't have. I mean, does anybody have real massive respect for a soya plant or a veggie burger or something like that? Not really. You don't have the same connection. So the experience is just as deep. And if you can't get to meditate, you can't do this, your life almost becomes more flexible. Your emotions are more stable. Your thinking is more clear. You don't get in these black and white thinking patterns, you know, reductionist nonsense. You seem to be able to see, I mean, you see that when people's brains are fueled, they seem to be able to see subtleties in things as well. It's very difficult for a vegan, because it's like good or bad. That's it. There's nothing in between. There's none of these gray areas that we've been over today. But when you see their brains nourished again, it's like you see an argument between a carnivore and a militant vegan online. And there's such, you know, not always, but 98% of the time, you get real sensible, chilled out arguments. And then eventually you just get a whole load of attacks and insults and swearing and accusations and, you know, full caps shouting and whatever in the comment, you know, about them being a murderer and all of that. And the brains clearly are not working properly. Because they haven't understood that they don't have the moral superiority. So the brains aren't working properly. And the same goes with the spiritual side. You'll be more grounded. There is no difference. You know, I haven't suddenly become a completely aggressive beast because I eat nothing but animals. When I do meditation or a breathwork journey or something like that, I still attain absolute bliss. I love it. You know, it's great. I don't feel I need it all the time. But if I do feel I need it, there is no difference. There's no like, oh, well, at least I'm healthier, but I don't have that level of consciousness that I used to have when I was veggie or whatever for 30 years. Nothing like that at all.
But the emotional stability, it's actually hard to go back and remember what it was like without it as well. I mean, I don't, it's possible that there's some kind of, that going through malnourishment helps you to see certain things that, or have certain experiences that, I don't know. I know that extended fasting can be a spiritual exercise and has been used in multiple traditions. And so, you know, who knows that chronic malnutrition may unlock a certain kind of spiritual door. But I tell you, Yvonne, for me, I'll take the emotional stability any day of the week. Thank you very much of that. And knowing where I belong in the universe, rather than trying I mean, when I was a kid, I was so desperate to connect with something else, something other, something outside of this mundane world. Now I'm in love with this mundane world. You know, this natural, spinning, glorious, multi-layered, rich, beautiful life that we're part of, and I'm privileged to be a part of it. And it's not wrong. It's not wrong for me to be a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. And enlightenment has been overcomplicated. Enlightenment is nothing more than a little switch of your permanent viewpoint, that you can see the unity of everything, and you can see, let's call it the canvas that all of the emotions and experiences are painted on. So you can have a complete, absolute, solid bedrock to everything, whether you're suffering, whether you're in bliss, whether you're in love, whether you're angry, whatever, you can see the unity that's painted on. That's all it is. And that is not affected by anything. We're also in spirituality. There's a lot of myths about spirituality and enlightenment. Everybody's chasing the bliss. Now, yes, you meditate. I mentioned bliss. It's lovely, but this is not enlightenment. Enlightenment has nothing to do with any particular emotion and isn't connected with any particular emotional feeling. It just is. And that is not affected at all by whatever you eat. So once you've got that, people seem to think that enlightenment brings tremendous happiness and whatever. It brings a what they call, I believe in the Bible, a peace that passeth all understanding. But that isn't happiness. That is just an ability to accept everything, even if it's horrific. And when you're told that, you know, most people think of enlightenment as something wonderful, great, enormous amount of psychic experiences, bliss and heaven and all of that. That's got nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it whatsoever. So even spirituality has led you down the wrong path, and eating meat has nothing to do with that. And as Ben said, now he's happy with whatever's going on, because this is an extraordinary miracle. Imagine if nothing was happening. The difference between nothing happening and everything you see around you is such a miracle. Why do you want to just throw that out and chase for more and more? I need this, I need that, you know, in my consciousness. I need to sit in lotus position for 3 hours a day and not bother with enjoying the universe because I need to get somewhere that I'm not. It's actually quite an absurd concept, the whole of it. And I can say that because not only was I vegan, I was one of those people that sat in lotus for 3 hours a day. So, you know, I can see the absurdity in all of it. And meat is not going to stop you ascending. It's not going to do anything like that. And I believe that this whole business of ascending to 5D and whatever that is being pushed around now by the New Age movement is actually really quite damaging, because I don't think that sort of state even really exists. I don't think anyone's going to ascend to anything. We are here, we're now, we are all one organism, we're all unity consciousness, and we're also individuals at the same time. And you realize that you can go through life perfectly well, perfectly healthily, with all your sexual desires intact. They're not evil. You know, eating meat, it's not evil. Swearing, it's not evil. I've done a blog post. It's on my way. It's on my
brackets. Depending on what your sexual desires are, we may have to. There may be
well, yeah,
a couple of clauses in there.
Absolutely, yeah, within the normal range of consenting adults and lampposts. But yeah, I did a blog post called "Myths About Enlightenment and Waking Up." It's on my my website, pureactivity.net. Have a look at that. I go really, really deeply into all of these misconceptions about it, because I think once we get that, we don't need to rely on gurus, whether they're diet gurus, whether they're spiritual gurus, whatever. Just rely on yourself and your own desires. I mean, how many times have vegans said to me, "Oh, well, you only eat meat because, you know, it's the taste and it's your lust for meat." Why do we have a lust for meat? It's because we're designed to eat it. Hello. Why do you guys make veggie burgers and stuff and try and make meat out of vegetables? We don't make broccoli out of steaks. We have no desire to. So, you know, I think that to look at it like that and realize that we are given these desires, trust your desires. And when you're of a stable mind and emotions, I think it's very unlikely that those desires are going to be the sort of desires that will harm anybody else.
Yeah.
And so go with those desires, be mentally stable, emotionally stable, spiritually stable, and meat is going to do an awful lot to take you towards that. It's not going to take you away from it.
And it will help you to accept reality and accept the truth that you're great, nature's great, life's great, none of it is wrong. But look at the criminals and look at their messages. Look at the spells that they're trying to cast over you. Look what they're trying to insinuate. And that the whole eco panic movement, to me, I've described it for a long time now as being like a kind of a new original sin. The original sin in the Catholic Church was a really, really powerful tool. It was saying to people, you are fundamentally wrong, right? There's something inherently wrong with you from birth. Ain't nothing you can do about it without salvation, which comes from the other. It comes from outside of you. And in order to achieve salvation, you have to grovel and you have to debase yourself. Now, I'm not speaking against the Christian faith here. If that's what you believe, that's what you believe. You're welcome to it. But what they've done is they've taken that and they've modified it and they've carried it over to this new eco panic to say that by nature of being excuse me, a Western human, a consumer on the earth, you inherit this new original sin, and you must therefore atone again in other ways. So, excuse me, maybe I'm being struck down by a plague. Yeah. So, what do you think of that, Phil? This idea that they want you to be dissatisfied with yourself, with life, with the cycle of life, and excuse me, they want you to feel guilty for everything that's going wrong in the world. You know, it's all related.
Yeah, I think you know, we covered all of those points. Just getting back to being human, getting back to understanding who we are, is so important. And then really, you know, I've realized while we've been doing this, I thought we'd finish up with giving some actual practical points about transitioning. And do you know what? I don't think there's much point doing it, because everybody is going to be different with how quickly they can do this. Everybody is going to be have different levels of imbalances and whatever. They're going to have different gut flora. That's going to take them a different time to rearrange. Different nutritional deficiencies, and also they're going to have different experiences with the shedding of plant toxins and whatever. So the only way that we're really going to be able to do this is if you get on the Big Fat Tribe. You know, if you I don't know if this is going on my YouTube channel at some point. Maybe not. I don't know. If you're listening to this and you're not in the Big Fat Challenge, get into the Big Fat Challenge. If this is going out, which it definitely will, first of all, anyway, on the Big Fat Challenge, and you're not in the tribe, and you're vegan and you're having difficulty, you're probably going to need support day to day. You know, a lot of people in there have been vegan, they've been through this. You will have questions that will come up every day about things that have happened, different things that are happening in your stomach, in your emotions, all sorts. And you're probably going to need day-to-day support. And that's going to be the most useful, because we could go into every aspect of everything we can think of during the transition of different vegans into a more animal-based diet. But God, we could go on a week on that, covering every single thing, and hypoglycemia and this and that, and different stool textures and you know, and indigestion, not being able to deal with fats, electrolyte imbalances. Wow, we could go into anything, but you might sail through it. You might have some issues, but if you do, then I think we've covered the ethical and moral and spiritual side of it here. Join up on the Big Fat Tribe and talk to us day to day. We have quite a few calls, and we'll help you through it, because there will be questions, and probably best off dealt with as they're actually happening to you while you're transitioning.
Yeah.
And that's transitioning in a healthy way, right? We're talking about coming back to our ancestral diet, nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. Yeah, there is help available. There is support there if you need it, and we would be happy to help you out. So yeah, let's leave it there. Thanks, Phil.